Welcome to another episode of Founders Club. Today I'm out here in Newport Beach getting ready to sit down with pro skater Mikey Taylor to talk about his incredible journey of starting and eventually selling Saint Archer Brewery to Miller for an estimated $50 million.
I struggled with at an early age worrying about what other people were going to think of me, and it limited what I was going out to do because I would allow their opinion to ultimately rule my life. And most likely you're gonna be dealing with your parents or friends that are gonna tell you you're crazy. You have to just recognize that they care about you, but they don't rule you, and you need to just go out, get past it, move forward, and ultimately lead.
And all of the exciting things he's doing right now with his real estate fund, Commune Capital, in redeveloping projects in the multifamily space.
You've been hounding me every single week for 14 months. All right, I'm gonna give you a shot.
Yep.
And then you better close.
You better close
right?
on that shot, for
The
sure.
thing that's amazing is when you do close, you're gonna get a follow-up deal right away, and another deal, and another deal, and then it's just like, it just starts coming at you like full force.
If you like it, give us a thumbs up, subscribe, and we'll see you on the inside. Let's get started. Well, first of all, man, I'm really excited to be sitting here with you. We're at the Helmsman Ale House in Newport Beach, having a couple beers. Mikey's enjoying the Centerline IPA, and I'm having a Newport Blonde. Been a long time fan, and just of not only like the skateboarding journey that you went on, but just seeing you evolve into like an entrepreneur, doing what you did with Saint Archer, doing what you're doing now with Commune, being in the real estate development space. I was really kind of like kicking around where to start. I was like, man, our audience is super real estate, but he's got such a good story. Like where do we begin? So I want to start with the skateboarding stuff just because I feel like that really laid a foundation for you and kind of built your name. And curious, like what initially was it that drew you to skateboarding? Because it's kind of an outsider sport, especially growing up in the 90s like we did. And I remember taking my skateboard to school. I'd get hassled by the jocks, and it was like not cool at all.
That's right.
So like what was it that drew you to that initially?
My original draw was actually like super random. There was like a cool kid or a person who I thought was cool that got a skateboard. And I ultimately just wanted to fit in. So I got one also. That was like my first draw. But what I experienced from it was, prior to skating, I always did like team sports. And it was always like my team against the other person. But skateboarding was the first thing where it felt very like me against myself. And I love the idea that like I was only competing with me. So that was like kind of the first draw. Two, it really changed like my perspective of what the world looked what the world looked like in front of me. Where prior to skateboarding, I would look at, a set of stairs, I'm really stumbling on my words. A set of stairs as something to walk down, or a handrail to like, hold as you walk down the stairs. But once skateboarding came into my world, it was like, holy crap, people jump on those. And then it was like, cement walls became, how could I skate it? And it was kind of this idea that the world was a little bit different than I thought it was. And it all was inspired by skateboarding.
Yeah. I know you used to terrorize handrails back in the day.
Yeah.
I think what always fascinated me about that is because I've always loved skateboarding, but I've never like gone there, taken it to that level. Like, what is it that allows you to push through the fear of like going down a 20-stair handrail?
It's a lot of work, actually. I think that's probably the biggest misconception about skateboarders is that we just are fearless. But like I was terrified to do my first handrail. It was like possibly the scariest thing I had ever done. It was just, you start learning almost like hacks that allow your body to do what your brain doesn't want it to do. And in the beginning, like, the process that I used to have to go through was just like sheer exhaustion. It was like, okay, I would roll up to the rail 100 times until I was like so upset that like I couldn't stop my body anymore from going. And then all of a sudden I would just try it. And then like after time, the amount of tries it took me to roll up ended up getting smaller and smaller. But dude, it was just like trying to find ways to trick your brain that it's going to be okay. But it's like something that like the fear never goes away. You just get better at like monitoring it.
Which I think is like a really important takeaway for business too, because like a lot of times you're scared to make that next move. You're scared to take out that loan. You're scared to take action on something. You're scared to put yourself out there. Like, what is it that you would recommend as far as just pushing through that kind of thing?
You know, what happened to me, it's funny. Everything that has helped me succeed now has come from skateboarding. And I think the biggest driving factor was like dealing with fear. And after a while, you just kind of learn what holds you back. I know for me, it's like every time I'm about to make a decision that's somewhat impactful, I try to convince myself out of it. It happens without doubt. Like, you know, if I'm starting a new company, I get to like a year in where it's about to be go time, and I always try to convince myself out of doing it. And I think it's like my body's way of trying to like protect myself. But once you realize that like your body actually doesn't want what's best for you a lot of times, right? Have you ever heard the kind of analogy that if you're comfortable, you can't grow, but your body always wants you to be comfortable? It's like our
protection mechanism.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So like once I kind of realized that like if I don't feel, if my body is trying to hold me back, it's not my gut trying to keep me from whatever you want to call it, succeeding. It's actually like this weird like subconscious that's just like scared of me getting hurt. But I just realized it was like, dude, I just had to stop listening to myself. You know, I think that's probably the biggest thing from skating. It was like I was going to
say that's an interesting parallel because I'd imagine it's very similar.
Well, yeah, I mean, do you think about it, man? Like if I would have listened to my mind when I was a kid trying my first handrail, I would have never been a pro skateboarder. But since I went through all this action to like force myself to do it, well, that spawned a 15-year professional skate career, and then everything else I did was an extension of me just pushing myself through what I was scared of doing. You know, so I've seen the rewards on the other side of what it takes when you're just like, don't listen to yourself trying to say no.
You got to taste the fruit, the forbidden fruit.
That's right.
So like, you know, your skate career has been well documented, but like if you could go back in the memory banks, what's one thing that stands out as just like, that was just a really amazing experience as a pro skater?
Like the first street league, I think, was probably pretty big for us. And for everyone who's, you know, on the real estate side doesn't know skateboarding, Street League was like our big contest series.
The first really big contest series,
you know,
outside of X Games.
So they had X Games, right? But X Games, so let's take a step back. So skateboarding, and probably one of the things that kind of drew me towards it was it's not based around competition. Skateboarding is based in, you know, for us expressing ourselves in the street and, you know, video parts. The contest stuff was kind of for a select few. And that's who skated in the X Games.
Almost frowned upon.
It was frowned upon for us. And what happened was Rob Dyrdek had this idea that he could create a competition for actual street skaters. And then Street League was, you know, birthed. And all of a sudden it took us like street skaters and put us in like a stadium with like, you know, 10,000 people watching us. And I remember like, just like the first time I experienced that, you know, multitude of people watching us, it was like, whoa. This is pretty
crazy,
you know. So and it's like for a non-contest skater, that was pretty massive.
So Street League, that was kind of the standout.
I think that was one of them. You know, I think another one is like the first time I saw somebody riding my own skateboard or
your own pro model.
Yeah, and I had my own shoe. And I think the first time I saw, you know, this is a good story. So I had my own skateboard, and so I would see other kids that were wearing my skateboard. And I was like, wow, that's cool. But when you have a shoe, you have people buying your product that aren't skaters.
Right.
And the first time I saw, we used to call them a regular person. The first time I saw a regular person wearing my shoe, it was like, oh my gosh, this is like out of control. Like everyday people are wearing our product. You know, those are probably like a few of the big standouts.
That's a trip. Well, I could definitely sit here and talk to you about skating all day. One thing I know that you kind of still have your big toe in the water is with Sovereign, right? So what are you doing with Sovereign? That's your skateboarding brand.
Yeah.
What are you doing with that, and kind of what's the vision there?
So, okay. What I'm doing with it ultimately is like what happens to a lot of skaters when they stop being a pro skateboarder is they get outside of skateboarding and then they like kind of fall out of touch. And like I never wanted that. So my idea was if I owned something inside of skateboarding, it would always like keep me in tune with what was happening. That was, I think, like my bigger
finger on the pulse.
Yeah. Just like, I mean, dude, when you get older, it's hard to like stay current. It's hard to like know what the kids are doing. But if you have a brand whose job is to sell product to the youth, you at least have more of a, insider, what would you call it? Inside track to like what's happening with kids. I always wanted that too. I think like my vision with it is our vision was ultimately to present something that is aesthetically pleasing beyond skateboarding. So we kind of wanted to have every board be something that anyone would want to hang up in their room, if you were a skater or not. So we put a big emphasis on aesthetic, doing artwork. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Something I actually wanted to ask you about a little further down in terms of like branding, because I think that's something you've done really well over your career, is just creating that strong brand around the things you're doing. So like with Sovereign, you're very, a lot of white, a lot of clean, simple, crisp graphics. How important do you think that brand feel is in terms of growing a business?
I mean, coming from like somebody who leans more towards the marketing side, I think it's everything.
Yeah.
Right. I think it's like, for people who aren't brand people, you can compare it to how somebody looks when you talk to them, right? Like, are you more inviting to somebody who doesn't know you if you look nice? Or if you're kind of rugged and you haven't shaven in like a month and you're kind of wild, it might deter people from wanting to get to know you. A brand kind of follows the same suit, where if a brand is consistent and, let's say, welcoming, it might drive more people to the brand. I think the hard part isn't so much the colors you're using. People have a hard time staying consistent, right? And you have to remember, people who are viewing a brand want to trust the brand. And if there's no consistency, that means there's no trust. And if there's no trust, it's hard to get a consumer to not only purchase, but to feel part of the community. I think it's very important. I think it really comes down to knowing who you're building the brand for. Let's say something like Sovereign that is very, let's call it edgy, or there's a certain kind of art demographic that we're trying to reach. That is not going to be built for maybe the sports fanatic in a sense, right? So knowing who you're building your brand for is probably the most important thing, and then staying consistent
within that.
Yeah.
So, do you still skate?
Not enough. Truthfully.
Enough.
Yeah. I'm probably, God, if I'm being honest with you, I'm probably skating once a month, maybe.
Ooh, yeah.
It's hard right now. It's hard for a lot of reasons. One, as you know, when you're building a business, it is hard.
Yeah.
It is just exhausting.
All consuming.
It's all consuming.
Right.
Which is one. Two, the skate kind of, the mentality or the personality that skateboarding attracts is a very obsessive personality. And so I'm kind of consumed by what I'm doing. And right now what I'm doing is not skateboarding. So it's like I'm having a hard time turning this off to like go skate for fun one day a week or one day every 2 weeks is something I'm just not doing well at in that sense.
I want to take what you said there, because I think that obsessive part is, I think that's an entrepreneurial characteristic. And I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that, because I find myself the same way. Like if I'm on something, like I'm all in on that. I'm like 100%. And it is very all consuming, and there's everything else kind of gets blocked out. Like, do you think that that's part of being an entrepreneur, or do you think that that's just how you were built and how you approach things?
That's a good question. I think that's a component that can be your biggest strategic advantage as an entrepreneur. It can also be the thing that destroys you as well. It's my biggest strength and biggest
double-edged
weakness,
sword.
right? Yeah. But I don't know if that defines you as an entrepreneur. I haven't given that enough thought. I don't know.
Okay.
I know for me, that's one of the biggest driving factors.
Yeah, me too. And I was just curious, because it's kind of a random thing, and it just came up, and I kind of feel the same way, where I just like hardcore obsess over stuff until I can get it done, like big project, whatever it is.
The thing is, like, I don't know if that's something you can teach.
Yeah.
Right? It's something that it's been inside me since I was a kid. So it's like, I think it's powerful when you can find the thing that consumes you, as long as it's something for the good. I've never been able to like turn it on and off based on like a whatever topic. Like if you were like, hey dude, go start a tire company, I could not just go, okay Mikey, become obsessed with tires. I don't operate like that. I'm more of a, maybe call it like a passion driven person, where I find the thing that I just am so intrigued by that it consumes me. But you know what, now that I think of it, I actually know a lot of entrepreneurs that aren't as obsessive as me. So I think what defines an entrepreneur is somebody who, oh God, now I'm going to contradict myself. I was immediately going to say somebody who's obsessed with creating a vision that's in their head. But then that counters the
I really
argument.
do think that's part of it, though, man.
Be.
I think that's really part of it. And it makes total sense as a skateboarder, because like you're just on it. You just want to skate all the time.
You know what's so
skate
funny,
every day.
man? Like people ask like, when did you become an entrepreneur? And I remember like the first fear of it was I didn't go to college. Right? I didn't go to college because I was going to go skateboard. And back then at that time, like I never thought somebody would hire me into like any type of good paying job. So when I was young, I just kind of told myself, okay, if you're going to pick skateboarding, that means if you want to do anything, you need to create it yourself. Because who's going to hire a ex-pro skateboarder like who graduated high school? You know, so that was like, I don't know if that like helped put me in the mindset of like, you need to create your own things. But I think skateboarding, it being so self-focused and, you know, it really is, you have a vision of what you want to do and you go out and create it, really complements an entrepreneur.
And it allows you to, you know, obsess in a positive way over like just.
But if we're being truthful, I didn't even know what an entrepreneur was 5 years ago. That just wasn't a term that
wasn't
we
on the radar.
use as skateboarders. It's like everywhere now, but you know.
When you started making money in skateboarding, there came a point where you thought to yourself, okay, now I'm ready to do this investing thing, right? And I know you were kind of mentored, right? So like, why don't you tell me a little bit about how you transitioned, or maybe be pre-transition, right? Because I know like the skateboarding just ended one day kind of suddenly for you, like it does for a lot of pro skaters. What was that transition like? And then what was the transition like in terms of the backfall on the investing side?
Okay. Where should I start? There are so many different paths I can take that. I guess to your first point, I don't know if I so much had the insight that I needed to invest as much as my parents playing kind of a bigger role of them being concerned that I picked skateboarding and not college, right? And part of that, like, dude, they were like really worried, like truthfully, like they did not want me to do it. And when I kind of decided to, one thing that they really encouraged me on was being introduced to Randy. I talk about Randy as being kind of my biggest mentor. My dad had a relationship with Randy, and kind of one thing he said was, okay, if you're going to pick the skateboarding path, I want you to go meet him. And so that's, you know, I sat in with him because my dad was like, you need to do this. And for context, Randy managed money for a living. He owned his own multifamily office. He managed multiple families' money. And then they also had a private equity division where they had 2 real estate funds. And so that was my introduction, was my dad saying, you need to learn something about money if you're going to pick skateboarding.
I love it.
And so Randy, he always had this idea with his company that if you invested with him, they wanted you to be more than a limited partner. They wanted you to feel like a general partner. So there was so much learning that went involved in me investing with them. I mean, looking back, and especially knowing what I know now, there's a lot of, let's call them financial advisors that would go, hey, dude, just give me your money and I'm good. And then they go do their thing, right? I mean, to think, like, why would a guy take a 19, 20-year-old kid and go, I'm going to teach you about behavioral finance.
It's really impressive.
I'm going to teach you about assets and liabilities. I'm going to teach you. And it was like, who could have asked for that? You know, it was like such a blessing for me. So that was like where it started. And then as I kind of started going down this entrepreneurial role, he was always the guy that I not only looked up to, but leaned on when I needed information inside of how to do what I was going out to do. Because again, I graduated high school. That was it. So I didn't have a business degree. I didn't know how to raise money. I didn't know much other than what skateboarding taught me. You know, so to have somebody kind of show me the ropes was pretty huge. And that ended up becoming an even bigger blessing when my career ended. And that was one thing Randy didn't understand, unfortunately, is how difficult a pro career was going to be when it ended emotionally.
Yeah.
But God, financially, he did so much for me, just teaching me that this was going to end, and there actually is a path to financial freedom.
That's great.
And it's not just have $1 million.
So your parents were like, we'd rather you go to school, not do this pro skater thing. But if you're going to do this pro skater thing, you need to learn how to manage the money. Talk to the guy, Randy.
Yeah.
Randy took you under his wing.
Yeah.
You started nesting some money with him.
Yeah.
He showed you how he was making it grow.
Yeah.
And that kind of prepared you for the investing path.
It did. I think more than anything, prior to investing, what he showed me was like, it's such a like basic concept, but it was like living below your means, right? Like don't spend more than you make. And really like looking back, my strategy in the beginning was similar to somebody's strategy on how to get out of debt. And that was because us as skaters weren't making that much money, right? Like you hear pro skateboarding, like, oh yeah, they're making millions. Pro skateboarders don't make millions.
There's like four that make millions.
There's four. I was not one of those four. So, I mean, do think like, how do you get somebody who's making $100,000 a year to be financially free in the next 10 years, right? That's what we were up against. So his strategy and what he taught me was, you know, when you're getting out of debt, it's controlling your expenses so that you can, you know, find out the spread between expenses and income that you can put towards getting rid of debt, right? I wasn't in debt, but we used that same strategy to allow me to invest
to grow the money.
Exactly. So it was like, you know, I remember the first thing he told me, okay, we're going to create a budget. And as you make more money, you're going to stick to this budget.
Your budget doesn't increase.
Exactly. But what did increase was the amount of money that I got to invest into assets. And then that was like the beginning, like teaching me how to be responsible while I wasn't making that much. So then once I started making more, I already had the tools to be responsible to then go implement into investing. So there was a lot of legwork that went in prior to me actually deploying capital into something.
Right.
You know, and I think, like looking back, that is probably the biggest thing he did for me. Because like investing, I mean, you know this, it's not that complicated, right? It actually, you'd be surprised how simple it is to learn.
Yeah.
The hard part is having the capital to deploy into opportunity. That's where people go, yeah, this sounds awesome, but I don't have the money.
Yep.
Right? So that was like something that like, I think, you know, changed the trajectory of my future.
And then what was the first thing you deployed the money into?
So this is funny, man. You know, I have meetings with him. He's teaching me about money. I think I'm going to be like Warren Buffett, right? What he told me, the first thing I was going to invest in, I was actually surprised with because he told me I was going to invest in myself. I didn't understand that back then, right? And so
I like that.
He goes, okay, we're going to invest in yourself. And I was like, okay, what does that mean? Right? And then he basically continued to say, look, the biggest return you will ever make is when you invest in yourself. 1. 2, your biggest wealth building tool is your income. So how can we invest in yourself that will basically cause you to make more money that then we could use to create more passive income, per se. So in the beginning, it was like, okay, Mikey, so how do you make more money? And as a 21, 22-year-old kid, it was like, I need to get my sponsors to pay me more. It was like that simple.
Right.
Okay, well, how do sponsors pay you more? Well, if I become better, then more kids I'll have a higher demand. So kids will buy more of my product, I'll make more money, right? And so he's like, okay, well, how do you get better at skating? And I was like, well, I need to skate more. But at that time, the challenge was the only place that we could go basically practice was at public skate parks. And when we would go to public skate parks, every kid there would know who we were. And
you get mobbed on.
We would get mobbed on it, and you wouldn't want to try something that you didn't know how to do because you didn't want all the people who knew who you were to think you sucked.
That's interesting. You're right.
Right? So what would happen is every time...
you didn't land anything today.
Exactly. So every time we would go to practice, we wouldn't be practicing. It would be like we were putting on a demo, and we were only doing the tricks we knew how to do. So I remember that was like, hey, I need to like figure out a place that I could go practice. So then what a couple people were doing was buying or renting warehouses and putting their own private training facility inside that warehouse that no one had access to.
Yep.
And so it was like, okay, how do we get you in a private skate park? So we started using money to then, at this point, it became a warehouse in North Hollywood, and we had a skate park in it, and we would go practice, and then I started getting better, and then sponsors started paying me more, I started making more money. that was like one of the first kind of ways we started investing in myself.
So you guys bought these buildings?
No.
Okay.
I didn't have back then it was, look, $100,000 a year, right? In California,
right.
It goes very quick. And second, at that time, my strategy was I needed to make more money. It wasn't build passive income in the beginning.
Right.
So the first amount of money went towards building my personal brand. And then
Skate more equals more money.
Bingo.
Right.
Bingo.
Okay.
And then I started making more money, and then that money started being deployed.
That's great.
When it started getting deployed, it was like, if it wasn't a brand that I was going to start, it was storage units at that time.
That's great.
So, dude, another thing too that we should touch on, we used the stock market actually, like back then, not to like have crazy growth, but the challenge that people don't realize is because you have an amount of money to deploy doesn't mean there's opportunity to deploy in.
Right.
And if you're just sitting on money, you're losing money.
Right.
So we would basically use the stock market as a holding place until opportunity presented itself.
So stack it up in the stock market.
Yes, the challenge is if you're just trying to keep up with inflation, then you don't need to look for these big growth funds or these huge rewards. You need to returns. You need to essentially keep up with 2%. Mm-hmm. So we were holding money in very conservative,
safe, simple stuff.
Yep. And then when something like a storage unit pop up, it was boom.
And they were vetting the deals for you, so you felt comfortable.
So at that time, they ran their own fund. So basically, they would go find a deal. They would build out their pro forma. They would present it to investors. Similar to what a syndicator does.
Right.
But they would just have multiple projects inside of one fund. And then what was cool, where the hands-on approach came, it was like, okay, so Randy, can you explain this to me? Like, what is, I mean, dude, it's so funny to think about.
No, that's the
like,
best
you can
education ever.
Totally.
I mean, you're talking about your money, so like you're obviously paying attention, and these guys know what they're doing.
Another big thing, too, that people forget is like when, like, let's say you're investing passively, so somebody else is doing the work, right? A lot of times the operator has the tendency to only say the good things that are happening. And it's a false front to the investor to try to learn because nothing is perfect ever, right? What Randy's approach would be like, dude, he would tell us the good and the bad. This is what we did well. This is what we struggled with. So it was like, I remember like each project, it was like, holy crap. Like I felt like we were doing the deal.
Right.
You know, it was huge.
That's a great learning experience.
Yeah.
So, okay, so I'm circling back to, it all ended with skateboarding.
Okay.
You're probably feeling defeated, deflated.
What, when my career ended?
Yeah. How are you feeling at that point in time? And then how do you overcome that and transition into beer of all things, which you know nothing about at the time?
So beer came before my career ended.
Okay.
Should we start with the beer or start with the career ending?
Why don't we start with the timeline? How did that go down?
So basically with the craft brewery, this is like, dude, maybe 5 months before we started the brewery, my wife, back then fiance, she kind of had a talk with me, right? She was like, hey, so I'm not saying you need to figure this out now, but just kind of start like thinking about what could be next. Like, what do you want to do? And I was like, okay. And I left that. And then seriously, like, you know,
planting
this obsessive,
some seeds.
And she knows how to, you know. So this obsessive kind of personality me was like, okay, what could I do? What could I do? And there was like a month-long kind of window where people would talk about like ideas. And my like quick response would be, let's start a company. So for example, we all rode for this backpack company called OGIO.
Yep.
And OGIO pulled out of skateboarding. And so the whole team no longer had a backpack sponsor. And I was going out shooting with this guy, Atiba, who's a skate photographer. And he was kind of had this conversation. He's like, hey, what are we going to do now that OGIO's gone? And the seed that my wife planted a month before, let's start a backpack company. We don't need them. We can do this all ourselves, right? And then seriously, 3 weeks later, I'm in San Diego with Josh Landon, who was Paul and my partner in Saint Archer.
Okay.
And we're filming a video. I get a call from another friend who's going to start a sunglass company. And I'm like, yeah, let's start a sunglass company. Hey, on the phone, look at Josh. I'm going to start a sunglass company. And that conversation sparked the overall idea of us creating Saint Archer. And so basically when he was like, yo, like, let's do something new. Like, what about a craft brewery? That same seed was stuck in my head. Let's do a craft brewery. Let's go get this, you know? So it was like my wife just randomly had a conversation with me that led to like me just saying yes to everything.
That's killer.
And so what happened was like Saint Archer came 3 weeks after me telling Atiba, let's do the backpack company. But there was so much more that went into Saint Archer that it kind of took precedence on everything that we were focused on. And basically me, Josh, and Paul spent the next year trying to figure out what that even meant. We started going to other breweries and
Well, that was actually my next question is what is step one? Like, how are you figuring this out? What are you doing?
Step one is research. So what we did not understand at that point was beer. We knew nothing about it other than we liked beer. That was it.
Right.
But we recognized that something was happening in craft beer because right around that time when we would go out to like parties, right? When I would go to parties, it was always Coors, Corona, kind of the go-tos. And then like some guy would bring this like random, gosh, at this point, like Sam Adams might have felt like a craft. It was like, but like, I was like, oh, what is that? And then all of a sudden somebody would bring like a Lagunitas. And then it was like, what is this stuff? So we started recognizing that there was a change happening or there was a certain industry that was growing. We knew nothing about beer though. So what we started doing was calling other breweries and setting up meetings to try to learn what they were doing and what the possibility of us doing it was. One thing we did know was marketing. That was kind of, if you're a pro skateboarder, the skateboarding industry is so competitive and everything is kind of the same. For example, every skateboard company uses the same wood, right? The only difference is a graphic. But how do you convince a kid to buy this board and that board where they're the same exact thing? Really good marketing. So that's something we did know. We just didn't understand what it meant to start a craft brewery. So our original idea was we were going to contract brew it. So someone was going to make our beer and we would just be responsible for marketing.
Marketing and sales.
And as we started going down that path, basically the margin was nothing and there was no money in it. And so we felt like if we went down that path, we would have had to start a brewery at some point. So we just decided we might as well do it now. And then we had a meeting with Randy. Randy, we're going to start a brewery. We need to raise money. We have to like do a business plan. What is this?
Yeah, how do we do that?
I didn't even know how to do a business plan.
Wow.
So Randy basically helped us create a business plan, helped us basically get all our legal documents to then go out and raise money, and then also taught us how to pitch and how to respond to investor questions. I mean, dude, it was like, imagine like...
Here's the common objections.
I think what it is like what it is supposed to be like when you go get an MBA in college. That's what we actually got.
In real life.
Exactly.
Yeah. Which
so
is
it started with us
times
learning.
Better.
Yeah.
I'm brilliant about it, and I don't know if it was just luck with timing or just brilliant marketing or both. But like, to your point, the craft beer thing was kind of bubbling and getting hot. And then leveraging this like community aspect of skating and action sports, which had like never really been done before outside of the sunglasses, the backpacks, the boards, the t-shirts.
So what's funny is, call it luck, call it fate, whatever. Skateboarders typically didn't do things with surfers or snowboarders. Skateboarding is like a very, this is our thing world.
Right.
Josh was a filmmaker, right? So Josh had a ton of friends in surf, and he also had friends in snowboard. And Paul and I were the skate community. If us three wouldn't have gotten together, the worlds would never have been combined.
Right.
And it was just like
crazy.
It really was. And that was like, I think one of the first times you ever had skaters, surfers, snowboarders, musicians actually a part of something and truthfully felt a part of it. It wasn't like, oh, we're all getting checks, so we'll show up for a photo shoot. It was like, we are all in this together. We've got skin in the game. This thing works. We're stoked. This thing doesn't. We're all screwed together.
Right.
You know? So it was special. It was not planned out. It happened that way.
It was super organic and it was perfect timing because again, like to get all these people, like I remember just watching it. I'm like keep my finger on the pulse. Like I grew up surfing my whole life, and I would just every time I saw Saint Archer, I would just buy it over everything else because I knew it was part of the part of the scene. I want to support the scene, whatever. And I think that was like, was that on purpose or do you think that just happened organically?
So,
because I think it's why the main reason you guys kind of blew up so fast, right? I mean,
gosh, it's so funny. Like looking back and trying to figure out why it worked, right? I actually truthfully believe that timing is everything. And I think like there's a lot of great ideas and great companies that get introduced at the wrong time and it doesn't work.
Yep.
Right? For us, I think a big component was when it launched and where social media was at that time. Right? So it was like, it's so funny, man, like talking about this. We raised the money to start the company, right? Which was like hard for us to do, and we were already running it pretty lean. And we were looking at our marketing budget, which was already nothing, and we're trying to figure out ways to cut our marketing back. And this might have been Josh. I don't remember who even said this, but somebody came up with the idea of like, hey, look, the majority of our investors have a social media following. Like, what if we just like post it on Instagram?
Put it out there.
And now it sounds stupid because of where we're at with social media. Back then
wild.
It was like,
that's crazy.
Would people like, could we do that?
Could that be a thing?
And so it was our whole idea on how to save money. And
so this was influencer marketing, pre-influencer marketing.
Totally on accident of us trying to save money. And so what happened is on social media, it was like in skateboarding, you never had all these guys come together to create a company outside of skateboarding, right? It was always skateboard companies, apparel brands, a craft brewery.
Yeah.
And then let alone with all these guys, it was just, I think there were a lot of people that looked at it and went, this is amazing. We're going to support this. Like you guys are now contending beyond our industry. Yes.
Yeah.
We're going to support it. And it was just like, it aligned, man. Crazy. It was crazy, you know?
And so how did you guys handle that, scaling that massive growth super fast? Because it was what, like a 2 or 3 year run?
3.5 years.
Yeah. 3.5 years from start to sale?
Yeah. So it's funny, man. When things are going good or things are going bad, you always have problems, right? Our problem, thankfully, was a good problem, and it was how to keep up with demand, which we decided to create a company in a capital-intensive industry. It was expensive to grow. Of
course, yeah. I imagine it's not cheap to start a brewery.
No. So that was hard. And ultimately, I've got to give a lot of credit to Josh. His personality, he's great at pushing people through challenges. So he really kept everybody pushing forward on these capital raises and on this kind of scaling window. Mm-hmm. Because even though you have demand, doesn't mean it's all going to work out, right?
Course, yeah.
We all feel good, everybody's showing up to the brewery, but we're still losing money.
Right.
We were never profitable. So it's you still have to get on board investing more money in something that is really going to pay out if we sell. Mm-hmm. So it was scary. It was hard. It was expensive.
How much money did you have to raise at the beginning?
Our first raise was $2.5 million. And then I think we were at about $8 million. We were probably $8 million all in at the end.
That's great. Fast forward 3.5 years, a ton of growth.
Then my career ended. Oh, yeah, then the company's
yeah. So let's go to the career ending part in a second, because I feel like that probably happened twice.
Okay.
I imagine it happened again when you sold Saint Archer and kind of had that
So,
now what?
I'm going to answer it for you.
Feeling.
Yeah. So basically, my wife's whole idea with starting a company was this is what I was going to do after skateboarding, right? That's what Saint Archer was going to be. It was
right.
I was still a pro skateboarder, so I was splitting my time. And, I remember I would talk to Josh 3 hours a day, every single day. And the first year, it was okay, we can do this. At year 2, Josh was like, dude, you're over skateboarding. Let's go. Just be done with it. Let's go. And then all of a sudden, we sold the company. It was this was what I was going to do. Now I'm not.
Right.
And so there was there was such a mixed emotion when we sold. It was we sold the company and we were able to give all of our investors who, dude, a lot of them were friends and family. That was amazing. But I was also in a position where it was okay, well, what am I going to do after skateboarding?
So you started Saint Archer. When did the skateboarding career end, and when did you sell Saint Archer?
So we sold Saint Archer in October of 2015, and my career ended in February of 2017. And then a world of hurt followed.
Yeah, yeah. So then, how are you dealing with that? How are you now that the thing after skateboarding is already come and gone, and the skateboarding thing is now done?
Yeah.
How are you reflecting on what's next? And
poorly, I thought. Look, there's nothing can prepare you for something like that. Unfortunately, thankfully, I was in a position where I had put myself in a financially stable position, but dude, I was already a very what would the term be? I felt very humble in the sense of what my world actually was. And I felt very clear on the fact that this wasn't going to last forever. Still, nothing prepares you for like your whole identity being one thing and then it not being.
Right.
And it was like, dude, in the beginning, all I could say was like, you just no longer feel like you. Like, okay, you're Oliver, no, now you're not.
Yeah.
And like the initial feeling was like, how do I get back to feeling me? I remember for like 4 months, it was like, how do I get back to feeling like Mikey? And what I was doing was trying to come up with ideas of a new company that would then become my identity. What I was trying to solve this pain with. And it was like, dude, I would try to come up with this idea. I would get all the way to like for example, I was going to do a shoe company, right? And I was going to do a shoe company because my main sponsor, which was a shoe company, kicked me off. And like I went into this like defense mode. Okay, fine. I'm going to kill you with success. I'm going to start a shoe company. Totally. I'm going to beat your shoe company, right?
Totally.
And I get all the way to the point of having samples, like the brand identity done, samples from China. I'm looking at a shoe going, why am I doing this? Like, why don't I just work on the core issue instead of trying to create the Band-Aid to hide it?
Interesting.
And that was a very humbling experience because ultimately I think that is where I accepted that I was at my lowest. And there's something painful but also refreshing about being at the bottom in a sense of there's only upside from there.
Yeah.
So I kind of recognized that there was a lot of things I needed to work through.
It's just crazy that like that was your lowest when like you had a hugely successful skateboarding career, you sold this amazing business that you started, and now here you are feeling at your lowest.
It shows you how powerful purpose is.
Yeah.
Right? Success doesn't equal purpose. It's I think it's such a bigger conversation, but us as people need a purpose to push forward, right? Yeah. Regardless if it's business, if it's identity, it's ultimately why are we here? And once the purpose is gone, you question not only who you are, but what is the point in me waking up to do anything
with my life?
Right?
Yeah.
So it's funny, man. Like, yeah, from a financial standpoint, I was as successful as I had ever been.
Yeah.
And I was as miserable as I had ever been. I was more happy at 18 making $500 a month skateboarding every day.
Totally.
Right? So it's like, ultimately, I had to find what my purpose was to then motivate me to be happy and inspired to go out and basically beat the next day. You know? It's funny, man. I think it happens for everyone. It just happened for me earlier, right? Like you hear about a lot of people retiring at 65 and then they go through this identity crisis. I just had to figure out at 35. I was 34. Okay, shit, I'm retiring at 34. What the hell am I now?
Yeah.
That was brutal,
wild,
dog.
Man.
Brutal.
Yeah, that's super
Absolutely
wild.
brutal.
I want to ask you just a totally random, like, hater question that I saw on the internet.
Okay.
So, Saint Archer sold to Miller, and at that point in time, that was kind of like
whack.
Yeah. So people were like, "Oh, you sold out this and that." Like, what's your response to that?
What was my response then, or was it now?
Yeah, both.
What my response then was, I was ashamed, truthfully, and that's
crazy, right? It's crazy.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, dude, for us, it's you got to understand the skate world to understand that philosophy. But the skate world is very anti-success, right? It's not, when you sell something, it is selling out. So there was a part of it that felt like we were selling out, you know? I didn't get to possibly a year after it happened where I was like, you know what? Why am I letting like this kind of consumption of negative feelings make me not proud of something we did that was like amazing?
It was amazing.
Right? It was just, I mean, dude, I was
You probably got your friends and family a ton of money, everyone.
So this is the thing, we talk about like that we are who we are, the products, we're a product of the environment we grew up in, right? I grew up in the skate community. From 13 to 34, that's all my life was. And skateboarding is very negative, like truthfully. Like it is like, if you're not a skater, like we don't taught you, we hate you. It's like a very like anti-everyone thing.
It's inclusive if you're a skateboarder,
Absolutely.
and very not if you're not.
Absolutely. So like, dude, I even to this point, like I've had to work through a lot of challenges by being brought up in that environment. Now, there's a lot of positive aspects to it as well.
Yeah.
But like something like building a company and selling it, dude, for all the skaters involved, it was like, shit, we sold out.
Yeah.
You know,
Sellout move. Yeah.
Totally. It was tough, man. I remember like a week after is when Ballast Point sold. And so that was some cover for us.
Right. Yeah.
Because they sold for $1 million. So we were like, everybody stopped talking about Saint Archer. We were like, whoo.
Yeah.
We dodged that bullet.
Pressure's off now.
But then I got a little older and was like, you know what? Like, this changed a lot of people's lives. Like, I'll talk
100%.
specifically to my parents.
Right.
Like, my dad.
How good does that feel?
Oh my God. Like, I would do that over and over and over again.
Totally.
Like, to put like my parents in like a completely different scenario, and then who would become my father-in-law and mother-in-law and my uncle and it was like, there were so many like like my actual family was invested in this thing. And then all my friends were.
Right.
Like to see like, you know, people that are like my closest friends, like have this type of win. It was like, you know what? Okay.
Yeah.
Like this is huge. Like this is something we should be proud of. You know?
It is, man. It's really cool. It's
I
very
think what it
impressive.
comes down to is like people, like when you're building a brand, right? We go back to the beginning. When you're building a brand, there needs to be a purpose beyond the money, right? And when you sell a company, a lot of people have this sense of being lied to, that your intentions were just to lie to them to sell something, right?
Right.
I think that was where I was challenged by it. But it was like, you know what? Because I'm doing something for a reason, if the money follows, then that doesn't mean my intentions weren't pure.
Right, exactly.
Right?
There's nothing wrong with making a profit if it's made the right way and everybody wins.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Bingo. But dude, skateboarding, man,
Yeah,
like
it's
they're not
like
stoked
that.
on business all the time.
I get that.
You
It's
know?
crazy. You had your payday. You've overcome the emotional trauma of your skateboarding career ending. Now you start Commune Capital. What is the long-term vision with Commune Capital? Or what was the initial agenda first, and then kind of where you want to take it?
The initial idea was to do everything Randy did for me for as many athletes as I possibly could. Was the initial vision. And I say that in the sense of like, it sounds exclusive to athletes. In the beginning it was, straight up. It was like, I felt very isolated in the sense of like I was on an island by myself because all my friends that were skaters weren't going to have the same experience that I was fortunate to have, all because my dad was like, yo, dog, you're going to go speak to Randy. And then I had somebody come into my life and actually teach me about money, you know? So it was like my initial vision was, how can I duplicate him in this next company?
That's great.
And then what ended up happening, and it's really crazy to even talk about, it started off this small, right? For skateboarders. And then it was like, okay, and then we got a golfer, then a football player. And then it was like, it started expanding to other categories inside of skateboarding. What blew me away was the amount of sales guys who resonated with the athlete message. Where for athletes, we have to figure out how to retire in 10 years, right? But a sales guy, when you think about it, they have the same highs and lows that we have of not knowing what the next year is going to be like, right? For us, like the only security we would have was a 3-year contract. For a sales guy, their really only security is the year that they performed, and then the next year.
And you could have a superstar year, and then the next year could be.
Bingo. So what really I was like, I guess my eyes were opened in is how much this message relates to more than just athletes. And we started having, I started having a lot of sales guys go, hey, dude, I know that pain. Like, I know exactly what you're talking about not knowing what the future looks like. And then what would happening is there was a big similarity in an athlete having to reinvent themselves after skateboarding.
So the emotional side
is always having to reinvent himself also.
Constantly.
It's like there are so many similarities in the two paths, and then we started getting a lot of sales guys being a part of the community. And then it was like we started having entrepreneurs, and it started expanding into a bigger group than I originally intended, which has been humbling and exciting at the same time.
Really amazing.
Yeah.
So on the website it says, and I love this quote, financial freedom isn't a dream, but rather a tangible life worth pursuing. And through Commune Capital, the way I understand the goal is acquiring and repositioning multifamily and mixed-use properties in gentrifying areas.
I don't like that term. If that's still the term, I gotta change it.
Okay.
I'm glad you said that. Because
I'm actually glad you said that too, because I got another hater comment for you.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm so glad you said that. That actually brings me to having to change that. I would say there's a component of investing that only gets you so far, right? The ultimate goal would be for you to invest with us, to have an opportunity to build passive income, but to also be a partner and learn with us like Randy taught me.
I love that.
So there is a big component that the people that are involved in our fund, do we spend time with?
You're really bringing them in.
Oh yeah. I'm glad we have this. I need to put more emphasis on that. The part about gentrification is it's a shitty word.
It is a shitty word.
It sounds too cutthroat, and I probably should have been more, because I don't know when did you get this? When did you get that? Has that been changed?
I don't know. So let me read you the hater comment, and then
before you read that hater comment, I just got to give it context.
Okay.
I didn't realize when I started the company that gentrification had such a negative view. I just thought it was an area turning around.
Yeah.
And that's a case of not having enough information and just putting it out there. I think that's actually been changed. And I think the big thing was there are so many people doing bad business and it being associated with what gentrification is that I don't like how that makes our company sound, because I think that I don't believe in a lot of the people that are doing business the wrong way.
And I think the word rubs people the wrong way, which I can understand.
Well, because it sounds like you're ripping people out of their homes. I totally understand that and sympathize for it, because
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It's
Cheers.
Cheers. But say the comments.
All right, the hater comment. And it is strictly basically related around the gentrification term, right?
Yeah.
With no regard for the classist and racist connotations of using the word gentrification in a positive light, in an investor pitch no less, or what the value add strategy might spell for local residents trying to survive a devastating rent surge, Mikey's short-sightedness did not even consider how his business might affect his own community.
So that was an article. That was a full article.
Yeah.
It's funny, man. Sometimes people say things and it affects you. That was one that hit me, and I probably spent more time evaluating what I was doing beyond the normal hater, which actually sometimes is healthy. And I think for us, I had to get to a point of going, am I doing this for the right cause? And ultimately, does he have a different view of what we're actually doing? And did I make an error on communicating it the wrong way? And I believe I did.
Yeah.
And why we've changed the language to hopefully fit what we're actually doing.
Makes a lot of sense, yeah.
Dude, gentrification could be so many different things. Like a big component of what we do is repurposing, right? So we have a project right now where we bought a foreclosed Sears building, right? It was a dark Sears building, completely dark. And it was attached to a mall that is on the verge of going dark. And so you can consider us buying a Sears building and scraping it, which is our plan, and building a mixed-use community of retail and parks and living. That is considered gentrification, right?
Right.
But we have a dark building that was once a staple for the community that is now an eyesore of misery in a sense, and we're creating new life out of it where you could argue that no one is losing a home, or so there's ways to do it in which are good. But God, I'm going to agree with him in the sense of when you say gentrification, it has a negative viewpoint to it.
That's an interesting response, because when I read it, I was like, I see his point, but I thought it was a little unfair, right?
I agree with you. You know what, actually, this could actually benefit a lot of people, because this hugely benefited me. When you hear criticism, you need to understand that a lot of times they're saying it through their experience and not yours, right? So when I first listened to this guy, immediately it took me to defense mode. No, I'm not. That's not why I'm doing this. It's not how we do business, right?
It's harsh.
And then the second time I read it, once I calmed down, I tried to read it through his perspective. I don't know what his experience was like. He might have lived in a house and was barely scraping by, and somebody might have came in and raised his rents to a point that he had to leave. And his experience could have been very painful.
100%.
And that's being portrayed on me as I being the one who's doing it to him, right? That doesn't mean that. That means he might have had a bad experience and I'm just the one he's taking it out on. And I think viewing it as that has allowed myself to not take things so personal and being kind of stuck in this trap of battling with a guy that doesn't help me build my vision or my purpose.
I love that.
That's a
very mature answer. I like
it. I have had a lot of experience of doing it the wrong way.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. I mean, dude, being on social media, you know this. It's like you have people attacking you always, right? If you're going to succeed at it, you got to get to a point where what the words that people are using towards you don't cripple you from what you're trying to accomplish. And that was like a powerful one for me.
And I think one of the biggest things with real estate investors is, there's some unscrupulous people out there that are doing things the wrong way, up to no good. But in reality, like, when you go into an area that needs love, right, a neighborhood, and you go in there and you turn around a building and you add video cameras to make it safer, add lighting to make it safer, fix the building, kick out any drug dealers and any people that shouldn't be there so it's a safe, then like really you're doing a lot of good for the community. And if you're able to make money in the process,
it's all in the perspective in which you look through it, right? It's like, and dude, we do deep value add projects, right? We find buildings that are dead or incredibly run down. So it's like, somebody might say, oh yeah, dude, like you're kicking people out of their home. Like, dude, that is not what we're doing. Like we have like a cockroach infested crackhead, like
a trap house.
Dude, we're creating like actual, like we're creating an area for people to actually use. Like, but there is a part of me that understands it. It's like, I know there's a responsibility in it for us to do things the right way, and there's going to be people that do it the wrong way. But that's everything. That's beyond real estate. It's life. I mean, look at like the police. There's bad cops. There's good cops. You can't just say all cops are out killing. You can't say that. It's not true.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah.
But that's the message that goes on.
That also is the message coming from certain people's experience. Back to your point about
exactly right. So, dude, through your experience, that's absolutely truth, right? You just have to recognize that we all have different filters, or lenses, whatever you want to call it.
So, what sort of projects are you looking for now? Is it mainly multifamily apartments and storage units, or what? What's kind of the bread and butter for your vision?
Okay. It's funny. There's I would say for the vision of what I'm trying to accomplish for our investors, right now it's multifamily and storage. I think those are just the two components that we, the asset classes that we drive forward at. I think like the thing about multifamily that I really like dude, like for anybody who's in storage, they know. For anybody who's not, storage units are like a great asset class. They cash flow like crazy.
Right.
They're stable. They're pretty awesome from an investment standpoint. From a creative who came from skate, and apartment buildings are a little easier. It's not much you can do with a storage unit. Yeah. So like, I do like the apartment side because you are building a community that people are actually living and a part of. So there is a part of that asset class that I think lends towards my skill is not the right word. It's more, I don't know, enjoyable in a sense.
Yeah, and you can beautify it. Like it is a piece of art.
You can contend with culture in an apartment building where I don't want to say you can't storage. I just have figured out how to get. Yeah. But storage has been good. So I would say that's where we focus.
And then, how are you raising money for these deals? It's mainly private investors, I'm guessing. Yep. Is it accredited, non-accredited, everyone?
Okay, so right now it's accredited investors only.
Which is rough for raising money.
Well, you know what? It is and it isn't.
I agree. Right? Totally agree.
Okay, if you're going specifically on raising money, I think you can raise more money from accredited investors, right? But when your purpose is trying to get people to financial freedom, coming from an industry where the majority of them aren't accredited, that really limits my vision. So I'll say this: we do not have what would be a reggae offering, reggae plus offering right now. We will. There absolutely is going to be a time where non-accredited can participate in our community alongside accredited, because that's ultimately, I think, my vision and purpose. But gosh, working through this world is different than anything I've ever done before. It's incredibly different than the brewery industry or the craft beer industry. It's incredibly different than the skate industry. There's just way more regulations, so I'm...
A lot of red tape.
Oh my gosh, you have no idea. It's funny, man. It's the first time I've actually ever felt like I was part of a corporate structure. Because prior to this, we did whatever we wanted. Boom, boom, boom,
no
boom,
rules.
Boom. No, I never had to worry about like being regulated by the SEC. And it was like, wait, what? I have a compliance officer. It was just, that part is new for me.
You're liking the multifamily space. You're going after accredited investors to raise money. How are you guys finding the deals that you're looking for? Because I think for a lot of investors out there, that's probably the biggest challenge. It's money or deals, right? Depending on which side of the coin you're on.
Right?
So how are you guys finding deals?
So we use brokers. To this point. Or I shouldn't say it like that. We use brokers, and a lot of it has been God, where am I going to start on this? Okay, so brokers can be great if you can create a great relationship with them, right? What you're ultimately trying to do is get access to off-market deals. This is where we want to participate.
You want to be called number one.
You want to be called number one. You need to become very good at networking and start actually building a trustworthy relationship to have access to those deals, and that takes time. There's a component where, for who my partners are, and a lot of the relationships that they had built prior to this new company. And truthfully, I've gotten good at leveraging what I've done in the past to create new relationships in the future. Right? So, for example, we participate in Long Beach. I've been able to use who I am to get in the door to the basically guy making the decision. And then I'm able to start creating the relationships to then start seeing actual off-market deals, not just, let's just test these guys and throw them the crap. Right? So I would say it just takes time for anyone who, so to answer your question, we use brokers. We have relationships with brokers who we're at a point where we see off-market deals with. There also is a part where we have used developers that we've done deals with that will basically bring us a project that they've gotten under contract.
Oh, nice.
And we will come in and become the equity
it's
or
ready
JV.
to go, they just need the money.
Yes. So we get to participate in that side as well.
Cool.
For somebody who wants to go find their own deals, it's like the art of the first deal, right? It is incredibly hard to get your first deal. It really is, right? And really, you have to understand the broker world. And I think a lot of your listeners are brokers, right? Brokers get paid when you close, right? So if you have this massive project and you're going to make money when you sell it, you've got to take a huge leap of faith to trust somebody that you've never met before to pass them a deal and risk not closing on, which means you're not making money on.
Right, exactly.
So typically, and let's just use apartments because that's where we focus, the brokers bring deals to people they know are going to close.
Exactly.
Right? So for somebody trying to break in, it's an uphill battle in the beginning. A lot of times it might take you 12, 15 months to get one broker to go, you know what? All right, dog.
You're my guy.
You've been hounding me every single week for 14 months. All right, I'm going to give you a shot. And then you better close.
You better close
right?
on that shot for
The
sure.
thing that's amazing is when you do close, you're going to get a follow-up deal right away and another deal and another deal. And then it's just like, it just starts coming at you like full force, right? You just have to push through to get the first deal. That's the challenge.
That's a very good point because it's hard to get to pole position.
Hell yeah.
But once you're pole position, if you're closing, you're pole position all day because they know that you can.
And so look, I would recommend this. If you're starting to create a relationship with a broker, he is going to be vetting you to find out if you are going to close or not. So you need to know what you're talking about, right? And that's a big one. Like if you say anything that might give him a hint that you won't close, you lost your opportunity.
Yep.
So like make sure you are educated. Like let's say apartment buildings, right? You have a lot of single family investors that want to move into apartment buildings. And unfortunately, it doesn't matter how big your portfolio is in single family. Brokers in multifamily do not care at all.
Different world, yeah, they don't care.
Completely different. They want to know how many apartment buildings you've closed on.
Yep.
And I'm not talking duplexes or quads.
Right.
You need to make sure you can hang in this world. You know all of the terms. If you do go through a walkthrough with them, you're actually asking relevant questions because ultimately you're building trust over and over for them to go, okay, you know what? I'm going to give you one. Okay, fine. Seriously, you've broken me down long enough. Here you go. Right. You just need to be willing to go through a whole year of eating crap until they throw you a bone.
Yeah. It's the kid asking for ice cream. He just keeps asking until he gets that ice cream.
That's exactly. You have to be so persistent, right? So that's what I think. If you're getting into like doing deals yourself, that's where you want to go. If you're investing in other people, I think it's less about how do you find deals and more about how do you do due diligence on the people you're investing with. It's probably the more relative question.
Well, that's a great transition, which transitions right into my next question of why Commune Capital versus someone else? Like,
that's a good question. It all goes back to building brands, right?
Yeah.
I think people that invest with us resonate with what we're doing. And I say that because, look, in today's market, right, you know this, like, you pretty much are going to see the same return from every deal, right? It's going to be anywhere from a 6 to 8% pref. It's going to be most likely within a teen IRR based on if you're looking to buy on cash flow or appreciation or both, right? It's all pretty much the same right now.
Right.
So the question really becomes, who do you want to associate with and what is going to be a better experience, right? And now leaning into the investor that I've had experience investing in, let's say my partners now, Randy and his real estate deals.
Yep.
I've invested into other startups. The problem that a lot of investors feel is that they're always in the dark. They never know what's going on, right? And I've experienced that on the startup phase, but I did not experience that with my beginning investing in storage units. I felt like I was part of the team, right? So I would say if you want to actually have an investment in something and learn about it and feel like a part of a community and it ultimately there being more return than the actual IRR number, we're a good person to invest with. If what we're investing in aligns with what your goals are, right? That's a big one.
Yeah.
A lot of people, if you're a cash flow investor, well, you're not going to invest in a growth fund. If you're looking for growth, you're not going to invest in cash flow. So you need to be pretty clear on what your intentions are.
You hit the nail on the head with your own experience because you've done it both ways, so you've seen both sides. And I think that education piece that you guys bring in is the missing piece for a lot of funds because a lot of people that invest in people and funds, they feel like they're giving them the money and then it's kind of like they're going to just go and do their thing and you're kind of in the dark.
Well, that's what a lot of times it happens. That's true. Unfortunately, that's usually what happens.
And so the way that you bring people in, keep them informed is I think a key piece in terms of like engaging investors and getting more investors and increasing word of mouth referrals and all that kind of stuff.
And I think it all comes down to your experience, right? Like this is what I've learned. There's times that I've invested in something where the return might have been smaller than something else, but my experience was so much greater that I was like, wow, I actually like that more than the other. And that's not saying our returns are smaller, but I think there is a value also in your experience, right? So like what we try to do is our whole vision is making it more than an investment. It's making it a community of people that actually want to know what's going on, feel a part of something. We put a lot of focus on community, whether it's like what we build or our actual investors. Like we want this to be like an actual, like I'm a part of this mission,
And how are you set up in terms of your fund? When people put money in, is there different thresholds, get preferred rates of return, some don't? How does how are you guys set up?
So basically we do a preferred return for everybody. So like talking specific to our deal, we have an 8% preferred return and then we have a targeted IRR. You get that no matter what.
Okay.
And for people who don't know what a preferred return is, that basically means that you get paid first.
Yep.
It's a good way for, I think, us to put our money where our mouth is.
Yep.
Right? If you want to invest with me, you're taking the first
That's
date
a nice guarantee.
before I even touch anything. So I think that's good. There are different thresholds as far as carry goes based on what you invest.
Yep.
And for us, that's at $1 million. If you invest below $1 million, you have a percentage of equity or return that you get. If you
And it's
invest
higher with more than $1 million.
Yeah, and that's really like when you start getting into the million plus, you start dealing with more, call it institution money.
Right.
And we have to, as managers, give up on our return to
make that work.
Yeah.
And then what's your exit strategy on most of these deals?
So we are buy and hold. We're a buy and hold group.
Okay.
It's not saying we never sell them, but we do not flip.
Okay.
Kind of how we build out our, let's say, our pro forma. We show everything typically on a 5 to 7 year hold, and we're trying to accomplish a certain IRR by ultimately 2 of 3 things. You have your cash flow from, let's call it one individual apartment building. You have the possibility of a refi or multiple refis, and then you have an option of a sale. If we can't hit our projected IRR by a refi, then we will possibly consider selling it to achieve that return.
To get everyone paid out.
We haven't had to do that yet.
Cool.
But we, at least when we build out what our exit is, if we're not able to do it, that absolutely is an option.
So the strategy is right now, buy it,
We buy,
renovate,
we buy,
refinance, get the money back, hold it.
and let's say a perfect scenario. Let's use that for example. We buy something, we renovate, we refi, and then possibly or hopefully move into another project and then do the same thing over again.
Yep.
And the BRRRR strategy.
Yep.
So I have bigger pockets like to use.
Yep.
That's ultimately what we prefer to do. But if something doesn't work out and we're not able to refi and we're not able to hit our target returns, that would probably be a place in where we said, okay, we might have to sell it to be able to get those returns. We just haven't had to yet.
Hopefully you don't.
Hopefully we don't. Yeah. I think the buy and hold strategy is how you actually generate real wealth.
Yeah.
I think when you flip, you get stuck on this mentality of quick money now, but it's not forever money.
Right.
So I like staying there. It's where I've always participated in.
Yeah, I love it. Long-term cash flow.
But you got to be patient with that.
You're very patient.
You got to be patient with it.
Very patient.
Yeah.
So you've had all of these things that you've done in your career, right? You've lived the highs, the amazing times of being a pro skater. You've had the big exit on the business. You're working on a real estate fund for long-term wealth creation.
Yeah.
What has brought you the most joy over the years? And not in terms of like which one of those 3, but I just mean in general, like what really gets you excited about the things you've been doing?
Dude, truthfully, I'd probably have to say there's been like bits and pieces of each one. I think like, with skating, it was, I got to experience something that most people don't get to experience. And I think that was something pretty cool.
Yeah.
For like a kid from Newbury Park to like, find skateboarding, end up turning it into a career and traveling the world. That was something that like, I recognized was, I was lucky in a sense to experience that. The brewery, I think, the thing I'm most thankful for the brewery was what we learned through it. And then also, when you're able to give money back to people who trust in you, that's a feeling that I have never experienced prior to that.
That's great.
I think with what I'm doing now is probably the most, it's been the most rewarding thing I've ever done, actually. And I think it's because this is the first time where it hasn't been so selfish, like truthfully. Like prior to me losing my career, like it was all about
It's not
me.
just about Mikey.
No, and it was for a long time. That was most of my life, to tell you the truth.
That's very cool.
And when I had to figure out what my purpose was, I had to reevaluate what was important to me. And I was married and a dad at that point. So there was a part where I had to take a step back and work on being more selfless. And there is a feeling I get now, even if it's people I don't know, if it's a DM or a comment that's just like, dude, thank you. I have never looked at it that way. I'm so glad you're doing this. That's a feeling that is very new for me. It's something that feels incredibly rewarding. And to tell you the truth, the relationship I have now with my wife and kids is something that I want everyone to experience, because I was married and had kids prior to me coming to this idea of like, it's not about me.
Yeah.
And my life is just more blessed now beyond the money. It's like, it's just, we're happier, and there's way more joy in our life because of it.
Yeah, you seem genuinely happy, which is,
it's something I don't take lightly, because I know there's a lot of people that are struggling with that.
Yeah.
I think what puts me in a position of feeling so driven to do this is that I've experienced both sides of it. Mm-hmm. And I know that like, it's not luck that gives you happiness, right? Actually, it's so funny. It's usually the things that aren't easy actually bring you the most joy, right? Like, it's very easy for us to be selfish. It's really easy for me to go, yo, dog, like, I'm just doing my thing.
Yeah,
right?
I'm gonna stay in my lane.
That's easy, but it's not rewarding. The thing that's hard is going, hey, you know what? I'm gonna put you first. Especially when you say something bad about me, and then I'm gonna really put you first. Like, that's where like you actually create more joy. It just takes more work.
Right.
And that's something that, I've learned later in my life, but my life's pretty short, so I still have a lot of room to increase or to improve on it. But it's something that can be done.
A lot more to do.
Yeah.
The exciting part too is this real estate fund is something that won't ever expire.
Seriously, I can't tell you how awesome that is.
You could do that forever, which is amazing.
Yeah.
So just a question off Facebook. I posted that we were going to be interviewing you, and this is from Eric Upchurch. So shout out to Eric. You seem to have the X factor with all of the things that you've done in your career. What would you say is the one thing that's really driven you to that success in your endeavors?
Such a great question. Oh man, where do I even begin with this? Everything that I've been able to accomplish has been because of other people. And I say that in the sense of I've always surrounded myself with people who are better at things that I'm not good at. Mm-hmm. And so whether it was Saint Archer or Sovereign or Commune, I've been very self-aware on what my strengths and what my weaknesses are. And I've been willing to not have to be the focal point, in a sense, of allowing other people to succeed and flourish in an area that I can, right? And I think a lot of people get held up on wanting to take all the credit. And what stops, what I would say limits their growth is if you want all the credit, it's hard to have other people get behind you and want to build something great.
Yeah.
But if you're willing to take a step back and go, you know what? This is all of us together. Let's all glorify each other. Let's all show each other strengths, and we're all going to win. And that's how I've always tried to build things. I've never had to be the sole owner. I've always tried to have people around me and give them as much praise as ultimately I think they would give me. And I think that's how you create magic.
Great advice too. Just build a team, outsource your weaknesses.
So let me add to that. If you can't build a company that you can walk away from, you're not building a company correctly.
Amen.
Right? But that's hard for people to do.
Yeah.
Right? It's hard to say, hey, you know what? You got this.
Right.
I trust you.
Yeah.
That's hard to do.
Yeah.
But like that should be your goal. But you have to have a lot of confidence in yourself to go, you know what? These guys got this. I could take a step back, and somebody might question me and go, hey, but these guys are doing this. Like, aren't you supposed to be doing that? Well, no. Actually, Oliver's better than me at that.
Yeah.
He actually kills it at that. I'm not great at that. It's hard for people to admit that people are better than them at things.
I love too how you're spreading the love around too at that point, right?
Yeah.
It's not the Mikey show. It's let's bring everyone up together.
Yeah.
Kind of a vibe.
But I think that's what I experienced as a kid. Thankfully, that was the group around me. They built other people to succeed. And I saw how that worked, and I saw how that felt to me, right? Like, dude, Randy did not have to do that for me.
Right,
Seriously.
It's amazing. No, it's
Randy
amazing.
could have just been, I got you, dog.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? He built me up.
Yeah.
And it was like, I experienced what that did for my life, and I want to do that for others. It's like...
And what's fascinating is how many times he showed up in your life over the years.
He's my partner now.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It's like...
It's really fascinating.
It's insane.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
That's
cool.
crazy.
Yeah. So, I don't know. I think, like, just, like, get to a point of being, like, humble and selfless. As funny as it sounds, we think humble and selfless means anti-success. That's been the key to my success, truthfully.
Great. It's really great.
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate the time. I just want to end with what advice would you, because you've kind of become sort of inspirational in the entrepreneur space. So like what advice would you give to someone who's kind of earlier in the career, wanting to level up, wanting to do the entrepreneur thing?
Okay, I'm gonna give this to you through my experience, right?
Perfect.
Talked about
That's
through
the
my
best.
experience. I struggled with, at an early age, worrying about what other people were gonna think of me. And it limited what I was going out to do because I would allow their opinion to ultimately rule my life. And so if you're just getting started, and most likely you're gonna be dealing with your parents or friends that are gonna tell you you're crazy,
People
you have to
closest
just,
you. Yeah.
they always are. You have to just recognize that they care about you and they're worried for you, but they don't rule you, and you need to just go out, get past it, move forward, and ultimately lead, right? It's like really getting to a
Love that.
point of like, you are gonna have to accept that you're gonna be the leader, and it's gonna be difficult, but you have to move forward. And trust me, like just push through and push through and push through, and you'll be blessed by it.
I love it. Amen to that. Hallelujah. Really appreciate it, man. I just want to
cheers.
say
Thank you.
thanks again.
I appreciate
Your
that.
time's been amazing. You gave a ton of valuable nuggets, and we appreciate you. If you're watching, give us a like, leave a comment if you have any questions. I'm sure we can circle back with Mikey, and we'll see you on the next episode of Founders Club. So today we're out here at Helmsman Ale House in Newport Beach. I'm sitting here with one of the owners, Andrew, and the head brewer, Dylan, and they're gonna give us a tour of their establishment. Before we get started, why don't you just kind of tell us a little bit about the vision of the place that you had here when you first opened it? Like, I know that there's not a lot of breweries in this area, so what kind of was the vision behind it?
Yeah, we're actually the one and only brewery in Newport Beach, which is kind of cool. At least for now, we can keep saying that as long as we can until the next one opens. But this place originally opened mid to late 90s, and it was very busy back in the day and kind of ahead of the curve a little bit in the craft beer scene for this area. But then kind of got a little tired, and we acquired it. Operated it for almost a year while we were working on plans to do what you see now, and when we got those plans, we came in and ripped it apart.
And made what you see here today.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think one thing that's really cool is that you guys were telling me you guys do 15 beers on site here. Can you talk a little bit about the brewing facility and what you guys have put together in terms of the beer that you guys are putting out?
Yeah, I mean, we've got 14 lines here. So, as we took a while to build up, the list of brands that we brew here. So we've been supplementing those with guest beers. But right now, I think we've got 9 of our own house brew beers here. Try to have a good spread of like color, alcohol content, and style. Kind of have something for everyone.
Yeah.
If you like light beer. I'm really into the Gunboat Pale Ale right now. Turned out really good. It's sort of a perfect marriage of California Pale Ale with that more hoppy end, and classic English Pale Ale, which is more on the malty end.
Cool, man. We'll have to give that a try. Why don't we take a little tour and kind of talk about what you guys got going on behind the bar back here?
So this is the original brew house from Newport Beach Brew Co. It's made in 1994 by Specific Mechanical. It's a Canadian manufacturer. So we reused all of the vessels, all of the critical equipment like piping, pumps, all that stuff got replaced. So we've got a new chiller, new boiler, new mill, new grist case, grain handling. So everything's pretty freshened up, and I worked pretty hard to get these vessels back to like good working condition.
So you saved them, you brought them back.
We did.
Very cool.
Heavy chemical cleanings, brighten the stainless right back to
Nice.
brand
Yeah,
spanking.
it looks beautiful, guys. I mean, you did an incredible job. What would you say that you're kind of most proud of now that you got it pretty well done?
I think just, it's always been a dream of ours to have a brewery and make our own beer. So I think just this whole project coming together and being able to hire Dylan to, make some killer beers, it's been good. Even in the kitchen too, they're putting out some good food. So it's, overall we're really excited about this
Very
new
cool.
concept. Yeah.
Very cool. Thanks for sharing, guys. Really look forward to trying a couple of the beers, trying some food, and if you're in the area down here on Lido Island, anywhere in Newport Beach, come check them out at Helmsman Ale House.